This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to those joining us on Channel 191. I'll open this Wednesday, April 19, 2023, the Southampton Planning Board. We have all our members present tonight with the exception of Paul Fergal, who's been excused. And we have here tonight our Planning Board consultant, Richard Harris. And the main item of agenda tonight is this public hearing, which is to discuss the edited changes to the zoning bylaws of the town of Southampton. That was undertaken by General Code Corporation, which also did the general bylaws. And our particular chapter is Chapter 275. And this public hearing's purpose is to repeal and replace the existing bylaws and the edits that we have made over the last 5 to 6 years when we undertook this proceeding to update the bylaws, which have not been looked at since the 70s. There has been an amendment made here and there to certain bylaws, but as for bringing them up to date with Mass General Law, conditions that exist in town today that didn't 50 years ago. This also was undertaken by General Code Corporation, which renumbered, recodified, and revised amendments per Mass General Laws. And that being said, this will be on the warrant for the annual town meeting for the town to approve, hopefully, with their good graces with all the work we've done, and we'll go on from there. So without further ado, we are going to do a summary of the changes because the chapter itself is quite substantial. It's several pages long, and we did it when we edited it chapter by chapter over the last 5-6 years. So our consultant, Richard Harris, who has helped us in conjunction with our previous consultant, Larry Smith, he developed a summary of each chapter on what has taken place in the changes. So we will go through that section by section on what the changes were so the public is aware. And this will also be available at the annual town meeting as an addendum to the warrant, so the public can also see where the changes are if they need to refer to certain chapters. So without further ado, Richard Harris, our board consultant, will start with Article 1, General Provisions.
Article 1 reflects some consolidation and updating of different provisions of the zoning bylaw. There are some portions that were in different articles before, and now it's into this one general provisions bylaw. Most of the changes were in the form of minor revisions, primarily formatting, but also some punctuation and sometimes some grammar corrections. 1.1 is a title and authority. Again, this is minor revisions, primarily formatting. Purpose was also primarily for formatting, but also expanding on some of the purposes of the zoning bylaw. Severability is a standard provision that needs to be in all bylaws. The existing bylaw has it in several sections. A bylaw only needs it once and that because it's applicable to the entire bylaw. 1.4 is matters not covered. This just clarifies matters not covered by the zoning bylaw and how those are addressed, particularly the Subdivision Control Act. And interpretations, this section 1.5, well, at 1.5, again, minor revisions, primarily formatting. And repealer, this makes it clear that you're repealing everything previous and replacing it. That's an essential part of this. 1.7 is subdivision regulations, a new section that simply makes it clear the relationship to subdivision regulations and
just,
where that authority is.
Yeah, and just to note that we did not change anything in the subdivision regulations that exist now.
Right. The subdivision regulations, some that can be adopted by the planning board, but they have not made any revisions to those. Article 2 is definitions and word usage. 2.1 word usage. This section was subject of minor revisions, primarily formatting, but also clarifying use of some of the terms. 2.2, this is added to clarify that all terms are not defined in this section. There are specific sections that the terms are left in because they have very specific meanings for those particular topics. For example, inclusionary zoning has specific terms in it. Floodplain overlay district has specific terms in it, and the movement, excavation, removal of soil, loam, sand, those have specific terms. 2.3 is definitions, and for the most part, these terms were pulled from all the other provisions of the bylaw and consolidated into this location, except as noted in section 2.2. There are also some new terms with new definitions incorporated, and some terms are redefined, such as family. The legal context of family has changed over the past 30, 50 years rather substantially, and how that is addressed in regulations has to reflect the changing view of what a family is. That's just an example. Article 3, administration and enforcement. This article reflects some changes due to formatting and updating, but also includes insertion of new provisions, such as that are noted. 3.1, mixed uses. This section was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting and relocation within the zoning bylaw. It was in a different part of it before. Zoning permit, this is a new provision that was developed by the planning board working with Larry Smith, and it makes it clear that zoning permit is required and what that entails. 3.3, enforcement permits and certificates. This section was subject to minor revisions, primarily again for formatting, clarifying the language, and also updating provisions and relocation within the zoning bylaw. It was put in several different parts before, and now it's put in this one section for more logical purposes. That's the enforcement permits, certificates, violations, and penalties section. 3.4, zoning board of appeals. This was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting, clarifying language, and updating provisions. Appeals. This section was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting, clarifying, and updating provisions. Special permit provisions. This 3.6. Special permit provisions revised and moved into a separate article of the zoning bylaw, Article 10. 3.7 is variances. This section was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting, clarifying language, and updating provisions as well. Application, 3.8, applications relating to non-conforming structures or uses. Similarly, it was updated for clarification and formatting. And 3.9, site plan review and approval. This is a new section that is now detailed in a separate article 11.
Is that right, the Roman numeral?
Yes, XI.
That's right. No, it's IX, I see in there.
IX is 9.
So we want
Yeah.
it to be 11 though?
Be sure I didn't mistake.
Article 10 is zoning, so
Yeah. Okay, yep. Let's see, special permits is 10, that should be IX,
Okay.
9,
3.9 should be IX.
yes.
Which it is.
which it is in the
Which it is.
format. It's just a
Right.
typo in your
Typo in
format.
my summary,
Right.
which I'll correct this and send it back to Paul.
Yep.
Yes. Glad to caught that.
Those Roman numerals come in handy for
Sometimes not.
from college or high school, wherever.
That's the reason I usually don't use Roman numerals, but in bylaws you do for some reason. Article 4, establishment of districts. 4.1, division into districts, purpose of districts. All districts, including the overlay district, are listed in this section along with statement of the purpose of the district. And that's important because it helps when you're making decisions on special permits and site plans. Oftentimes the criteria is it consistent with the purpose? And when you have a statement of purpose of the district, it makes it easier for the special permit granting authority or permanent authority to make that determination. Zoning map, 4.2 zoning map. This section was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting and updating provisions. 4.3 rules for determining district boundaries. This section includes revised provisions which clarify how district boundaries are to be determined, particularly when there is some alleged or apparent ambiguity. Some of the existing provisions were difficult to read, and one would read them and have different opinions as what they meant, and this, I think, makes it clear as to what the rules are. And it's important, especially when you've got a zoning line that appears to follow a road, and make clear that it follows, does it follow the right-of-way, does the center line, when it's on a town boundary, how does it relate to that? A water course, so those type of things need to be clear, otherwise you can't really interpret the boundary.
And just as an aside for the public's information, that after some of the edits that we had made to some of the bylaws, they did come back with a series of questions before this came to draft form, questioning even our language in accordance with Mass General Law and the interpretation. So what we didn't have right originally was corrected by the general code people, which really is significant in this entire project that the Town Bylaw Committee undertook.
Can I interrupt for a second? I've just got a text from someone who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
They wonder if we can focus this a little bit better, because it's blurry in terms of the projection. And this, I think the idea is people could watch it after the fact.
And I would encourage that when I make the revisions here, that this be posted on the website, so people can go to the website and download it ahead of time.
That sounds good. So, Paul, it can be posted on the town website, right, in terms of?
This,
Yeah. The little
the cheat
hints,
sheet, yeah.
plus the new ones that are going to be voted on.
I thought it already was, but I could be mistaken.
Well, one way or the
I asked-
other, it could
I
be.
asked to put it on. It will be put on before the town warrant, yeah.
Okay.
What you could do is you could just make it bigger on the screen, make it wider. That would make it easier for people to read. So if you zoom in.
Is it that one? To the left of the P? The other one?
And I can do this.
No,
I can do
that's not
digital zoom.
That's
I can do
it.
this.
That's better. Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
okay.
I got a button.
Yeah,
for
I
that.
can't, that's good.
Ask your friends at home if that's good.
Yeah, that's much
Okay.
better.
Oh,
Are we on Article 4?
Article 5, use regulations. 5.1, applicability of use regulations. This was subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting. 5.2, use is subject to other regulations. Again, this section is subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting. Table of use regulations. The previous zoning bylaw had the use regulations embedded into the bylaw. Also, the zoning bylaw provided for some special permits being issued by the zoning board of appeals. This is being changed to provide special permits by the planning board. The zoning board of appeals, as I understand, won't have any special permits in the use regulations.
And
And I
again,
understand that was done in consultation with the ZBA.
yeah, and again, that streamlines the process for the applicant because instead of going to 1 or 2 or 3 meetings, they can now
Right.
probably go to one
One.
and get everything done at that time.
Additionally, there's other benefit. The planning board does site plan reviews, and therefore there's consistency in the decision when the same body is doing site plan review as making special permit. Those issues can be treated consistently. Sometimes it doesn't always happen in a consistent manner in some communities.
And just for Dan and Cindy's knowledge on this is that we don't yet, if this passes, we will, but we never, someone came to us for a stormwater permit or another application of some sort, we never weighed in on landscaping, lighting,
that's right.
curb cuts, anything that went to site plan, which is very important to me. That devolved upon the zoning board, but it's a very important thing to undertake to make sure that we're all in agreement on how we want the site to eventually come about. And it was always part of the process in Northampton from the planning board, but it was not from our perspective.
So this will improve it, and it will be less
I-
fragmented.
I think so, and it's
Yeah.
also good for the applicant to get it all done.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's good not just for the applicant, for the public as well, so they don't have to go to 3 different bodies
Right.
for the same project review. They go to one. They don't have to knock out 3 nights during the week on the same project. It's going to be frustrating to a lot of people. They go to one thinking it's already addressed and find out, oh, Board X looked at it Tuesday night, and they had a different decision from Board A on Monday night, and that gets confusing to a lot of different people.
But does it make us the enforcement authority for those things like curb cuts and,
Well, we don't have authority on curb cuts anyway, but I'm just saying when it comes to landscaping and having an
Yeah.
input saying, say there's 2 curb cuts, we can recommend it down to 1, but I mean, we can't.
But any decision by
8 curb cuts.
under the zoning bylaw, any decision made by ZBA or the planning board, the enforcement entity is the building commissioner.
okay, it's still
As
the
an
building
enforcement officer,
inspector,
right.
okay. That's-
Section 5.4, special regulations in floodplain overlay district. This is a new section that's substantially expanding on the existing provisions to conform to new state guidance, floodplain guidance. Article 6, dimensional and density regulations.
No changes?
6.1, area, height, and bulk regulations. This section is subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting. Similarly, 6.2, screening and buffer strips in industrial and business districts. There's minor revisions, primarily formatting. And again, 6.3, other dimensional and density provisions are subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting. 6.4, accessory structures, again, minor revisions, primarily formatting.
So let's just define accessory structures, not apartments. This is outbuildings. correct?
Outbuildings, it's detached garages, it's
Sheds.
storage sheds,
Exactly.
those type of things. 6.5, infill and lot size dimensional averaging. This is a new section to address basically non-conforming lots and how those can be used. 6.6, reduction of requirements relative to land donations. This is a new section to provide some flexibility for land donations. 6.7, lots located in more than one zoning district or municipality. This is a new section that clarifies how those lots can be used and how you regulate them. Article 7, overlay districts, specific use and development regulations. This article reflects consolidation, clarification, and formatting changes, but also some new provisions. 7.1, floodplain overlay district, as noted earlier. This is a new section in this as well to conform to the new state floodplain guidance. 7.2, water supply protection district. This section was changed slightly to clarify some of the provisions and be consistent with other sections of the zoning bylaw and update the references to state laws and regulations. You can imagine over the decades, state laws and regulations have changed, and the references need to be updated. 7.3, wireless communication. Similarly to the previous one, it was changed slightly to clarify some provisions and be consistent with other sections of the zoning bylaw and update the references to state laws and regulations. 7.4, common driveways. This section has been revised to clarify, update, and expand requirements. It makes it clearer how you go about the process and what regulations and standards are applicable. And it addresses, if I remember correctly, some of the concerns that the fire department had raised about common driveways and DPW as well. 7.5, accessory apartments. This section has been revised to further the goals of the town's master plan. Among the changes are that accessory apartments could be detached from the single-family dwelling on the parcel that's located on, as opposed to the existing bylaw requires them to be part of the single-family structure.
If we could just, because this was one of the major changes that was done in conjunction with the DLTA grant that we had from the PVPC. In addition to the detached, did we also increase the size, I believe? One of the things we did, correct?
I don't,
600, no, greater than 600 square feet?
I believe that's what the existing one is.
All right, so we did not change that.
No, I don't believe so. I'll verify that, but I don't believe so.
I thought there was some discussion about
There was
upping that to 900.
discussion of that, but the bylaw that came back from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission left it 600 feet. And again, that could be something that we discuss for future amendment down the road.
Right. Was there anything else in that outside of the detached that was major?
I don't recall anything major beyond that.
Because that was in the master plan, right, too?
Yeah, the master plan talked about encouraging accessory apartments, and that's one way you can encourage it,
Yeah.
is to allow some detached units on it. It's particularly important because some people have a detached garage and are required to be part of the single-family home, you can use the detached garage as an accessory apartment. So it's actually very helpful to have that type of flexibility.
Right.
Saying if the detached garage has a compartment above it.
Right,
Yeah.
or behind it.
Okay, whatever.
7.6, solar electric generating facilities. This section was changed slightly to clarify some provisions and be consistent, again, with other provisions of the zoning bylaw and update references to state laws and regulations. 7.7, this section was subject of minor revisions, primarily formatting.
Yeah, but no, there was nothing major in that, it was virtually untouched. The language was changed per Mass General Law, but
Right.
we didn't address that at all.
So to summarize that, the inclusionary zoning bylaw still requires that beyond 9, new structures, new houses in a subdivision, they have to include one that's an affordable.
The existing provision is right.
Right.
Exactly the same, yeah, okay.
7.8, cluster development. This section was changed slightly to clarify some provisions and be consistent with other sections of zoning bylaw and update references to state laws. 7.9, planned business development. This was minor revisions, primarily formatting. Similarly, 7.10, minor revisions, primarily formatting. 7.11, multifamily dwellings. This section reflects substantial changes to make multifamily housing development more feasible for a variety of dwelling unit sizes. The existing provisions impose significant burdens on housing for families. Among the changes made to this section were revisions to the open space recreation requirements and elimination of the minimum frontage requirement. So that if somebody has a large piece of property, they could, in fact, do multifamily in the back portion of the property, maintaining an easement through the existing frontage property and use the frontage for commercial, if that's zoned that way, or use it for single-family homes or duplexes, something that would be separated into individual lots. 7.12, soil, loam, sand, gravel, quarry, or other earth materials. This section is a substantial revision of the existing zoning bylaw provisions relative to this topic. Among the changes include clarifying requirements, requiring a special permit from the planning board for non-exempt activities, detailing of applicable requirements, expanding and updating requirements. This was worked on by the board when Larry Smith was your consultant. Home occupation, 7.13, home occupations. This section is subject to minor revisions, primarily formatting. 7.14, radioactive waste facility, again, just minor revisions, primarily formatting and clarifying applicable requirements. 7.15, adult use marijuana establishments, minor revisions, primarily formatting. And similarly, 7.16, registered marijuana dispensary, minor revisions, primarily formatting. Article 8, general regulations for uses and special permits. 8.1, pre-existing non-conforming uses and structures. This is minor revisions, primarily formatting. 8.2, off-street parking and loading. This section reflects changes in parking and loading space requirements, including but not limited to establishing minimum and maximum requirements, clarifying requirements, updating requirements to reflect current planning practices, detailing parking requirements for different uses. I'll note that historically, zoning bylaws established minimum parking requirements and had no maximum. And therefore, you see developments with large expanses of asphalt, and you look at them and say, why is all that asphalt? I drive by this development, and every day, and maybe 2 days out of the year, 75% is occupied, mostly it's half occupied. Well, you had no maximum, so a developer would put more asphalt there because they want to be sure they have plenty of parking spaces. And this impacts stormwater runoff, impacts solar, climate change issues by heating surfaces, and therefore the current practice is, in some places, to eliminate parking requirements altogether, and other places is to at least put maximum requirement limits on it. There are some approaches where the bylaw will provide a parking space provision, then allow the planning board to increase or decrease it based upon a particular project. Oftentimes, planning boards will decrease it and make the applicant justify any increase. And some developers will want to put a lot of asphalt out there because they want to be sure they've got plenty of spaces. That just...
Isn't asphalt expensive and building parking lots expensive? And don't they require maintenance? I mean, they kind
But
of break down.
sometimes tenants will want to be sure there's plenty of space for their customers.
And they're
okay.
impervious.
Well, they are impervious. Well, sort of.
One comes to mind to me right off the bat about that provision was,
By the way, you're supposed to speak in the mic. Somebody told me we can't hear you.
a situation came up with O'Reilly Auto Parts, you know, next to or adjacent to the Red Rock shops. And that question came up when they were going for their special permit and whatever to find, because their parking was about required at that time because of the type of business they had, was like, what, 5 times, 10 times what they actually needed.
Right.
And they got the waiver for it from the zoning board, but yeah, that's a perfect example. That was too much.
Yeah.
It wasn't defined clearly at all.
8.3 signs. Again, minor revisions, primarily formatting and clarifying applicable requirements. Article 9, this is a new provision of zoning bylaw. The existing zoning bylaw has site plan review and site plan approval for different classes of solar generating facilities. This article requires such site plan review or site plan approval for different types of developments. So it's not just solar generating, it'd be another approach. 9.1 is a new site plan review, is a new provision. 9.2, site plan approval is a new provision. As used in this bylaw, again, I think you and Larry worked on this a lot, and it follows what's in the solar generating facilities section. Site plan review is for minor, what I would term minor developments, and site plan approval is for your larger facility developments. Down the road, the board might want to consider an amendment that would change that to minor site plan review and major site plan review, something like that, so it's easy for people to understand.
So right now, the wording is either review or approval?
Depending upon the size of development.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Again,
That'll confuse everybody.
that is.
but that follows what's in the solar generating facilities section right now.
Okay.
So just maintain that terminology.
I hope you've made a note of that down
Yes,
the road.
I have, that's one that I would not even need a note to remind me of.
It seems clerical to me. Can't we make that change?
Not really.
Really? Okay.
No, everything's an amendment.
All right.
And where is it that sort of defines what's minor and,
Well,
I'm looking for what,
again, site plan review
Yeah.
is defined in section 9.1. Site plan approval is in 9.2.
well, yeah, I found those too, but does it differentiate why, by number of square feet or what?
No, you have to read the entire context of the section. It's not as straightforward as I would do it, and that's something if this goes through town meeting, which I hope it will, that'd be the first thing I'll recommend that you come back with an amendment for next year, is to clarify, to rename those and have quantitative
Yeah,
definitions
sure, something.
or use definitions. For instance, the community I worked with in South Hadley, we made minor site plan review relative to exempt uses, because sections exempt under state law from zoning, you can have site plan review, but we said, if you can't deny them, why require a public hearing on them? Such as a school or church. So we made those minor site plan review. Similarly, we had the size limitation, that if it was less than X size commercial, it could be a minor site plan review. That wouldn't require a public hearing, it would just be more public meeting review, and it also would be something that never required a special permit. Special permit would automatically trigger a major site plan review, because you got to go to the public hearing for special permit anyway.
All right, so that brings up, okay, so we've had 4 or 5 group homes constructed here in the past 10 years. They're exempt from site plan review?
Yes, they have to be treated like a single-family home. To treat a group home different from a single-family home, group home, it depends how size it is, but typically group home is 3 to 5 people, and those are usually just treated as a single-family home. If you've got a treatment facility that has a 20 to 30 person occupancy, that could be done differently, but that still would be a exempt use from zoning. So we'd probably treat that as a minor site plan review. But that's probably going to trigger a stormwater permit anyway.
Some did and some didn't. However, some got neighbors' comments because of the size of the driveways they had, which, parked
They have
with their
vans.
staff and stuff and vans, it could be up to 6, 8 vehicles.
And there's a big jump
sometimes.
between
But-
4 or 5 residents versus 25 or 30,
Right.
so,
Yeah, but if it's, you have base treated like single-family home typically, and that's the reason oftentimes you don't know where the group homes are, because
that's intentional, actually.
that's a house, the assessors will know.
What's that?
The assessors will know.
The assessors know, and the
Right.
neighbors, the close neighbors probably know. But
But the single-family home, and to treat it differently is a discriminatory action.
yeah, because it's a home,
It's just a home.
yeah.
We've had that situation before where neighbors did not like what was going on, and we looked at it, and our town council looked at it and said, it's a single-family home. But they're unrelated. Well, it doesn't matter. They're still a single-family home. And that's just part of the issue to deal with under the Fair Housing Act.
Just mention that, I just took a note that after we're done getting this approved, that one of our next items would be clarifying these sections.
Right.
Because I think this is something we
Yeah.
can
Uh,
do easier for the public to understand and for us to understand also.
Article 10, special permits. This article reflects changes in the existing zoning bylaw, primarily to clarify requirements and provide that the special permit granting authority is to adopt rules, policies, and procedures to detail application requirements. Since this effort began, the state legislature has amended applicable statutes which offer different voting thresholds for approval of special permits. And I think that's something we'll need to take a look at as well. I note that this bylaw does not specify the voting threshold. It's not specified in the new zoning bylaw. And that's not necessary because you had to operate under Mass General Law anyway. And as long as it references Chapter 40A, you're fine.
Say, for instance,
most special permits require a supermajority of the special permit granting
Members present, voting
No.
members present? Or is it-
supermajority of the special permit granting authority. For instance, a 5-member board requires 4 affirmative votes. If only 3 members are present, then you can't approve it. Now, if there's 2 that can't vote because they had recused themselves, I advise getting town council opinion as to how you handle that, because the statute is clear that requires 4 affirmative votes.
So in other words,
Now,
if
there
you
are
had-
exemptions under,
If you had 3, then you would have to cancel the meeting and reschedule a hearing.
yeah, well,
So you had a quorum, or more than a quorum.
should have already. If you don't have a 4 members at a hearing, the applicant should request a continuation, and the board should vote to approve the extension of the deadline for acting on it.
Is it the board's?
Speaking to the mic, lots of people are listening at home, yeah.
Because you can extend the deadline for, there's a deadline for making a decision on special permit applications, and that can be extended when there's mutual agreement between the applicant and the special permit granting authority. For that to occur, it means the applicant needs to request or authorize an extension, and the board has to vote to agree to it, and then you have to file that notice with the town clerk. So there's a public record of it. If you don't do that, then the extension is not in effect. And that could be a problem, because if you don't act within a specified period of time, it can be approved by default, by failure to act. And so I've always made a practice that whenever the planning board, and Southampton planning board did all the special permits, I'd always ask the applicant to, if they are in agreement with the extension, and give us something in writing, which they'd write it down quickly, board would vote, and then we'd extend it. And then next day we'd file that with the town clerk. Just to make sure there's a very clear record of it.
Did that have to be re-advertised?
No, no. No, once you open a hearing, you don't have to re-advertise or re-notice, because the abutters got the notice of it, the public was notified of it, anybody that has interest in it should be there, and therefore they are given notice at that time, because when you continue a hearing, it has to be to a specific date and time. Some boards will say, we're going to continue this hearing until the applicant provides X document. That's not sufficient. You have to continue the hearing to a specific date and time, let's say May 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Now, if you did that because your expectation is the applicant is going to provide the document you want by April 30th, and they don't, then come May 5th, at that hearing, then you want to continue it again. But you had to do it to a specific date and time, and can't do it just to a specific date either, because people have to know what date and time they need to show up for that. And I've had situations where we had to do a 2-month continuation, and even though it's not required by law, I would usually, especially controversial projects, I would send out a regular notice by regular mail to the abutters, just to let them know, hey, you showed up here, or you were notified this, and this was continued. It's been a while, so just let you know this is the date that's been continued to.
Okay.
Because most hearings were only continued 2 weeks. When we got to one that's done continued 2 or 3 months, that seemed to me a bit long for people to be able to remember they need to show up.
So most docs deal with making sure that all
Dan, you
members
have
are
to
present.
speak in a mic here.
So most of those cases were due to not having members present. That was the,
Most cases, because there were requests for more information from the applicant. We've had cases where we had a lack of a quorum, and if that was going to happen, or if I found out there's only going to be 4 members at the public hearing, and that means that one member wouldn't be able to participate in the vote, I would notify the applicant, let them be aware, and if they wanted to request a continuation, they could do so, and the board could then vote to continue the hearing instead of reopening the hearing.
right.
I can only remember once or twice an applicant did not want to continue the hearing. Most applicants, if you tell them that, no, you got a special permit before the planning board, it requires 4 out of 5 to vote yes for approval, and only 4 members are showing up, most applicants will say, I'd rather go with a continuation because I don't want to eliminate somebody from voting on it because I don't know how everybody's going to vote. This just makes common sense that most people would want to increase the opportunity for approval.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up is that we talked about having an associate member, and I believe this is the section in which an associate member would apply, right?
Yes. But to have an associate member, there's other steps that need to be taken to have that occur. And the zoning bylaw can be amended to allow for an associate member.
And just to take that one step further, in the event of a board that's short members, it devolves upon now does the planning board petition the select board to say we need an extra person to be on this hearing?
No.
Or
It
how's that
happened
work?
recently in our town.
What we did in South Hadley was we petitioned to have the zoning bylaw amended to create a position of associate member pursuant to Chapter 48, Section 9, Mass General Law. Town meeting approved it. And then the way we set it up was the planning board and the select board would jointly appoint the associate member for a 3-year term. Yeah, 3 years. And then once that person's appointed, the planning board's practice there was to encourage the associate member to attend all the meetings and engage in discussions of all the projects. There's a number of times where the associate member, when a regular member left the board, they weren't going to seek re-election, or they had to leave the board because of work or whatever issues, the associate member then became the regular member because, from a logical perspective, if I'm an associate member and I've been attending the meetings for the past 2 years and been participating, I've got a better understanding than most people of what the board's involved with and what the policies and what the authorities and functions of the board are.
Well, I think in most cases, too, that's their goal. If
Right.
you want to be an associate member, at some point, you would hope to be
Right.
appointed to a full board.
And it's a good training ground for a member.
So I took a note, and I'm just saying that may be another area that we want to look at
Right.
for the next revision.
I would encourage you to look at that very thoroughly, because I think it's a good provision. I think all boards, especially all permitting boards, should have a associate alternate where statute allows.
Well, we're going to be when Cindy departs here shortly, we're going to be 2 members down, so hopefully the election will bring us 2 members, because we got to fill those 2 before we can get an associate.
If not, the select board needs to appoint members quickly, because you need members to have a quorum. And you can vote on subdivisions with only 3 members, but you really need to have all 5 to function completely. Applicability, 10.1, applicability. This section makes clear when a special permit is required. 10.2, applicable provisions, provides the special permit granting authority is to adopt rules, policies, and procedures to detail application requirements. 10.3, site plan required. It makes clear that part of your application for a special permit has to include a site plan. Sometimes people want to get away without doing one. And 10.4, public hearing. It makes clear that a public hearing in accordance with state law is required for all special permits. And delineates the requirements for timing of the hearing and the notices. 10.5, decisions. Outlines what decisions the special permit granting authority may make, and when the decision is due in accordance with Chapter 48, Section 9. Generally, boards can approve, deny, or approve with conditions. 10.6, findings required and review criteria. Makes clear that written findings are required with all special permit decisions and the criteria to be used in making decisions. There are some people that believe, oh, special permit application, the board can just decide yes or no. Well, you have to have criteria to frame your decision by. You can't just say, I don't like this project, so I'm going to deny it. I've had situations where board members have said very clearly, I really don't like this project, but it does meet the criteria, and therefore I'm voting approval. And the hands are tied. There's criteria that town meeting approved when they approved the bylaw. And I'm not going to flaunt town meeting. I'm going to adhere to what town meeting approved. And I'm going to vote for it. Now, they would then usually come back a month later and talk about let's change the criteria. And that requires amendment to zoning bylaw. 10.7, imposition of special conditions, makes clear the type of special conditions that can be imposed while granting special permit. You can't just impose any. It's got to be related to the project. And impose conditions, you need to be consistent. So if somebody applies for a special permit for multifamily on parcel A, and you approve it without any conditions, because I don't know, Joe Smith is a really good guy and does a really great job. He's got a nice plan. We'll approve it. Corporation A comes in, adjacent property, looks just the same. Oh, we don't know Corporation A. And then you start loading up criteria, conditions on them. You need to be consistent. 10.8, relationship to building permit. It follows the existing provisions of the zoning bylaw, but makes clear that a special permit does not constitute issuance of a building permit. It's amazing, well, not amazing, but people that aren't used to doing development will sometimes come in and apply for a special permit, and they think once the planning board and special permit granting authority is granted, oh, I can go out and build a building, and don't think that they had to get a building permit because I got a special permit. Why do I need a building permit? Well, building code requires a building permit. Special permit doesn't waive all of the provisions of statute. So. In 10.9, expiration of special permits, in accordance with changes that have been made to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9, this provision reflects an increase in the duration of special permit from 1 year to 3 years. And the state legislature made that change several years ago, reflecting the fact that developments take time.
Economic standard.
Especially during 2008, 2009, developers were getting stymied, and legislature were passed successive extensions of the deadline. And then they came back and just amended the statute to make it, you can provide up to 3 years. You don't have to, but you can. And it makes sense because somebody's coming in with a development that is, if they're going to build a single-family home, it's one thing, in most cases. But if somebody's coming in for a special permit for multifamily that's 40 units, they're also going to be getting financing. They have to get Mass DOT approval for curb cuts. They got to get Conservation Commission approval for wetland projects. And maybe they have triggered a MEPA review under state law. Those things take time.
MEPA is what?
Massachusetts Environmental Protection.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
EPA?
Those things take time. And instead of having 1 year deadline, where then they come back and they detail what's taking place in the past 11 months and ask the planning board for a 1 year extension, give them 3 years up front, and then if they need an extension, then it's a bit harder for them to justify, because once they get the permits, they still have to get all the financing. And I know a developer now that got approval for a project, and it's going to be an affordable housing project, and they got tax credit allotment. They went out and found out that their original cost estimate was low, and they're short on the financing, so they're still, 2 years later, they're still trying to get additional financing to make it work. And so it's recognition of the reality of development finance. A lot of people don't realize how difficult it is. Table 1, again, this table used to be embedded into the bylaw. It's now separate, detached. But it's still part of the bylaw, just not embedded in the section. And that's, in summary fashion, that's the what has been changed, the extent to which it's changed.
Just a typo over here.
Okay.
Take it over how that was printed horizontally.
Okay.
I gotta ask Deb why she did that, because when you bring it up on my screen here, it's the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know how to rotate it.
Well, this one's okay. What happened with it?
No, I mean, this is good, but see the table of use?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
See how it was done?
Oh, I see what you, oh, in the beginning, right.
And it comes up this way on the screen.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Okay.
That's not something you can correct, right?
If it's a Adobe,
Yeah,
you can rotate the sections.
can you?
Yeah, I can do it for you if you want to.
Guess I'll have to have you work on it
Yeah, sure.
sometime.
The biggest issue I had with way the change was made in General Code and ours was a use table. I used to have use table done in Word on my computer, and whenever there's amendment, I go and change it. That was done as an image into it, and so you can't edit the content of the image. So when I had to do an amendment, I had to go back and retype the table so I could then make the changes for town meeting, and for the Attorney General's office. Because whenever zoning bylaw is amended, you have to submit to the Attorney General the existing bylaw and an annotated version of the approved bylaw. So it reflects what was changed, and they can see that. And yeah, tables were always a pain once this, but I think General Code did a great job in South Hadley. I've used theirs a number of places, and it works really well. One of the really neat things about General Code, with the town General Code being done, as well as zoning bylaw, when it goes on live and let's say you put in swimming pools,
Yeah.
all references to swimming pools will come up, not just zoning, not just general. So you'll be able to find all the regulations that are applicable to it. And it really makes it much better when you're trying to find how a particular use has to be permitted.
I have a different question. we're holding a public hearing tonight, and if for some reason that this all doesn't go on the warrant of the annual town meeting, which is in a couple of weeks, how long is this hearing good for? Do we have to redo the hearing?
6 months.
Okay. Because I was at the select board meeting last night, and I heard that as I was leaving, they were saying, you know, what's going to be on the warrant, and I think it's really up to legal at this point, whether or not legal can get through all this. That's part of everything that goes on the warrant. So the advice is that we got to inquire of Ed as to whether legal has, you know, is going to be able to complete the review.
Yeah, well, I had a conversation with him today.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
they had some, not concerns about the content, they had concerns about sending a full package together and taking a chance that, you know, something could be struck down.
You mean like one section or something?
One section,
part?
one part of it, or one chapter, or whatever the case may be, but we've come too far,
Oh, agreed.
you know.
Yeah, that's for
Even
certain.
before Dan was around, you know, we've
was
done
before I was
5 or
around.
6 years working
6,
on this.
anyway.
This is something that is, the existing bylaws are ancient. There wasn't a lot tweaked in it. An E-code brought it up into the legal language, which is outstanding. But to take a chance and have a public hearing tonight, which is disappointing that there's no more people in the room that might had some questions, which concerns me a little bit, because I hope that there's, you know, the fire and brimstone doesn't happen at the town meeting when we've had this chance here to air out some of the questions that may have come about. So, you know, I asked Richard, and I'll have him explain too, that, you know, how else are we supposed to do this? E-code came along at the right time for recodification and getting a lot of the stuff organized, but it just so happened that we were working on it anyway. So we've got to continue, and hopefully if we can, if there are some issues, then amendments can be made on the floor and we can be voted on that and go from there. I wasn't about to cancel this meeting or withdraw the warrant, just too much time invested in this.
You would think if people had issues, they would have come to this meeting.
Well,
I know, I will say that when in Southampton, when we did the recodification of the general bylaw and zoning bylaw and regulations, that was handled as special town meeting in January one year as opposed to the annual town meeting, because select board and town administrator didn't want to get buried into discussion about the annual budget, stuff like that, so they put in a special town meeting to have all that addressed there, with only very few other items on the agenda, but all passed. Now, one thing to remember is that the zoning bylaw will require 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The general bylaw only requires a simple majority, as I understand it, but the zoning will require 2/3.
now should, I don't want to think this way because I don't want to think negatively, but should portions of it or the entire zoning get defeated, how long before you can bring it back? Can you bring it back at a special town meeting, or is it
Planning board can
another
bring it
year?
back. No, the planning board can bring it back any time. All it requires is a recommendation from the planning board. All that is required for it to come back is recommendation from the planning board, and then select will put it on warrant. Your public hearing is good for 6 months. Now, if it gets defeated at town meeting and you want to bring it back a month later, I'd still recommend a new public hearing, because if you get defeated, you don't want to bring it back without a public hearing. You want to give people a chance to say what they were opposed to, and hopefully you hear that at the annual town meeting.
Well, for those people in the listening audience, the cable TV, I invite you to contact me at southamptonplanningboard@gmail.com. And if you want me to email you the entire copy of this zoning draft, I'll be happy to do so. I'll also be happy to send you a copy of the abridged version of what the changes were. And I'll have, both of these are available at the town clerk's office anyway right now. I was assuming that they were on the website because the website's been under construction, and hopefully it'll be on the website before town meeting. But I'm serious. If you are writing on the fence about how you might vote on this going forward to town meeting, I'd be happy to send you this package so you have it, and you clear up some of your, or allay your fears about what may be happening that you're unaware of or question, because there's been a tremendous amount of work on this done to bring it up to speed into the 21st century, and we hope that the town will hear it out and bring it forward.
I would go so far as to say I'd be willing to have another one of these open public meetings if there are enough people with objections, so we can get these issues straightened out, because we put so much effort and work into this. And to make it even easier, maybe we should just put it onto the My Town Government posting with the agenda would go. Then everybody would have access to it easily.
I did attach to the agenda for this meeting on My Town Government this packet. It was attached to the agenda.
So they can get it online on that website?
Or they can contact me, as I said, by our email at southamptonplanningboard@gmail.com.
I haven't gotten any texts responding to that, so that's good. Very good. Good job.
Without further ado, I'm going to then, thank you, Richard, for your
Do we have to close the
putting
hearing?
that together. And I will ask for a motion to, since there's, you got any other questions, Dan? No?
I have no questions.
I'll ask for a motion then to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing on the zoning bylaw review.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, made by Cindy, seconded by Dan. Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is this your last meeting before town meeting?
Yes.
Then you probably should have a motion as well of the planning board recommending this to town meeting.
Well, since it's already been on the warrant, which we forwarded, we will,
You don't think it's like
we
dotting
will,
the i's and crossing the t's by doing that?
I think it's a good idea to have on record that following the public hearing, the board voted to recommend.
That's pretty easy.
The town
All right.
meeting approve it as presented, as drafted.
All right, then I move that this new zoning bylaws, as
Draft.
reviewed tonight, will be put on the warrant of the town meeting and accepted at the town meeting.
Not putting on one, but to recommend the town meeting approve it.
Approve
as-
it,
as
approved at
presented.
the town meeting. Got a second it, Dan?
Yes, I second that.
motion been made by Cindy, seconded by Dan, to forward this to town meeting for approval. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
And I'll look forward to you being with me, and I invite Dan and Cindy
I'll be at
also
town meeting,
to
yeah.
town meeting, but Richard will be there.
No, I think that's right after the election, right? Election's on the 2nd and town meetings.
Isn't-
Which way is it? Have I got it
Town
upside
meeting's
down?
on the 2nd, I believe.
Yeah, and the election is later, so I will still be on the board.
Is it an open town meeting or is it?
Yes. It's at Norris School, correct?
Correct.
Is it 6 o'clock?
I believe it is, yeah. I believe it's at
6
6.
o'clock. Thank you, Richard.
Welcome.
I'll be in touch, but we hope to see you on the 2nd as well.
And I'll make the corrections to this document and send it to you. Dan provided me with, I think, 3 typos I
Yeah,
need to make.
People want to know that there's a typo with the header in the word compared. There's a typo I noticed on page,
Can I ask the town administrator then to make this an addendum to the warrant article?
It should be,
Or
in-
just a plain handout at the,
or at least I don't know how you, do they do packets to town meeting?
well, they have the, yeah,
It should be part of the packet.
on page 3, there's a typo on the header of, just in the.
Your town meeting
comments.
is the 2nd, town meeting's the 2nd and the,
275-6.3.
sorry,
There's an 8 in the title.
depends on what's going on.
And then
The last one we
last
had one.
comment I made was about, this.
July?
I believe you all heard it was about the Roman numeral,
Uh,
is
Yeah.
also in there.
It varies according to what's, we've had over 250 and
Have a good night,
we
folks.
barely got a quorum.
I'll see you May 2nd.
thank you, Richard. I only have one other piece of business here. I got a bunch of warrants that I've got bills all of a sudden here. One is the Daily Hampshire Gazette for the publishing of this hearing. It was so big, $1,343.98.
Wow.
40?
Yeah, there were 6, what was that, like $660 a piece or so, each running. So $1343.98 to the Daily Hampshire Gazette. Motion?
I move to approve the warrant for the Daily Hampshire Gazette of $1,600 and whatever dollars you said.
$1343.98.
$1343.98.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Second one is for a voucher I put in for myself, which included copies for these manuals for all the board members and Richard, and binders to go with them, $86.02.
I move to approve the warrant, the purchase of the binders as well as the copies for this, the zoning bylaws,
8602.
8602.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And just for your own edification, those funds are coming out of the ARPA money that we were granted.
Okay. And I'm going to give mine to somebody that's running, and if you've got extras, there's 2 people, Mark Darnold and Stephen.
And the final one is, and it's also out of ARPA funds, and this was the additional funds they granted us because this came in after the first submittal I put in. This is to general code for the all the edits they made to this and the reformatting and everything else, which was not in the original contract they signed on with the town for the general bylaws. So our portion of it is $2,962.
I move to approve the payment of the
$2,962.
$2,962 to E-Code for the portion that planning board used for their services.
Was there any sense on that? Just, I'm trying to type this up.
There was no
No,
sense.
2962.
Okay, I second that.
Motion's made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any other reports or any other business? Is this your last meeting?
Actually, no. It's not. And I don't really have any reports that are different tonight, anything new and different.
Yeah, you're going to come the first meeting in May, right?
Maybe. That's committing.
You'll be in France?
Do we have any other business? Can I move to adjourn?
Yes.
I move that we adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Geez, I got this fancy thing all set up tonight with Dan's help and your help, and
Turn it on.
we're adjourned. Thank you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.